My name is Sarah. I'm 48 years old, and for most of my life, I thought I understood the world. I thought I understood faith, family, and the quiet order of things. On April the 12th, 2 years ago, I died in the fiction section of the library where I worked. For 22 minutes, I was clinically dead. And in those 22 minutes, I was shown something by Jesus Christ himself. What he showed me wasn't about the grand, obvious evils we all point to. It was about a quiet, subtle sin, a creeping emptiness that is consuming millions of good, church-going people. It's a poison disguised as entertainment, a worship disguised as a hobby. And his warning, it should terrify all of us. Before that day, my life was normal. It was a life of spine labels and overdue notices, of the quiet hum of the library's air conditioning and the smell of old paper and binding glue. I was a librarian. It was a job that suited me. I liked order. I liked quiet. My world was built on the Dewey Decimal System, on the predictable rhythm of the seasons, on the mortgage payments my husband Mark and I made every month. We had a daughter, Lily. 15 years old and hurtling towards an adulthood, I felt increasingly unprepared to guide her through. We were a family. We loved each other. But looking back, I see we were like a household of ghosts, haunting the same rooms but rarely truly connecting. We passed each other in the hallways, offering tired smiles and perfunctory questions about our day. How was work? Fine. How was school? Okay. The conversations were skeletons stripped of any real meat. My life was comfortable, but it was hollow. And the hollowness was my own fault. My core flaw, the thing that almost cost me everything, was a deep and abiding spiritual apathy. I was a Christian. I believed. I went to church on Sundays, Mark and Lily in tow. I put money in the offering plate. I knew the words to the hymns. But my faith was like a piece of furniture I never used. It was there, it looked right, but it offered no real comfort. It was for display only. My prayers had become a grocery list of requests, recited by rote in the dark before sleep stole me away. They were words spoken into the ceiling, devoid of feeling, devoid of relationship. I prayed, but mostly out of habit, the way one brushes their teeth. It was just something you did. The truth is, my quiet moments weren't spent with God. They were spent with noise. The constant, chattering, endless noise of the world. My phone was a permanent extension of my hand. In the staff room, I'd scroll through news headlines, each one a little jolt of anxiety or outrage. While making dinner, a podcast about celebrity scandals would be playing through a little speaker on the counter. I told myself it was staying informed. I told myself it was just harmless entertainment. But it was a filler. It was insulation against the silence. I was terrified of the quiet because in the quiet, the emptiness of my own heart might have become too loud to ignore. I was filling every spare second with the lives of strangers, of actors, of influencers, of politicians. Their dramas became my dramas. Their opinions became my opinions. I was a spectator to 1,000 lives, and in doing so, I had forgotten how to live my own. This truth was never clearer than in the last real conversation I had with Lily before I died. It was a Tuesday evening, just 2 days before the stroke. I was in the kitchen, ostensibly listening to her talk about her day, but my eyes were glued to my phone, scrolling through an article about some actress's messy divorce. Lily was talking about a girl at school who was being bullied. She was upset, her voice tight with a teenager's profound sense of injustice. And I just said, without looking up. She stopped talking. The silence finally broke through my self-imposed fog. I looked up. Her face was a mixture of hurt and frustration. "You're not even listening," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a flat statement of fact. "Of course I am, honey," I said, putting the phone down with a manufactured air of attentiveness. "You were talking about the girl." Her eyes narrowed. "What's her name?" I scrambled. I had no idea. I had heard the sounds she was making, but I hadn't absorbed a single word. "It doesn't matter," she said, her shoulders slumping. She picked up her own phone. A wave of guilt washed over me, sharp and unpleasant. I tried to deflect, to turn the tables. "You know, you spend too much time on that thing," I said, gesturing to her phone. All those influencers and celebrities you follow. It's not real, Lily. It's all fake. She gave a short, bitter laugh. Oh, really, Mom? She held up her phone. The screen showed a young woman with impossibly white teeth posing in a bikini on a beach I would never visit. And this is any better? She tapped the screen of my phone, which was still lit up with the faces of the feuding celebrity couple. At least my idols are rich and pretty, she snapped. Yours are just old and angry. What's the difference? It's all just noise. You taught me that. The words landed like stones. She was right. What was the difference? We were both staring into glowing rectangles, letting the lives of strangers dictate our moods and occupy our minds. I had no high ground. We were both drowning in the same shallow water. That's not fair, I mumbled, but my heart wasn't in it. Whatever, she said, and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the silent hum of the refrigerator and the glow of my phone. I stood there for a long time, the weight of my own hypocrisy like an elephant sitting on me. I had no idea that in just a few hours, that little moment of disconnection, that casual dismissal of my own daughter, would come back to haunt me with the force of an eternal fire. I wish I had run after her. I wish I had apologized. I wish I had thrown my phone in the trash and truly listened. But I didn't. I just picked it up and started scrolling again. The day it happened was a Thursday. It was bright and unremarkable. I remember the smell of the lemon-scented polish the janitor used on the circulation desk. I remember helping a college student find a book on postmodern architecture. I remember the sound of the date stamp, a satisfying clunk-clunk on the inside cover of a book. It was all so normal. So routine. So terribly, terribly fragile. I was in the aisle for modern fiction, shelving a new shipment of novels. I was thinking about what to make for dinner. Pasta, maybe. Something easy. Then a sudden, blinding flash of light behind my eyes. It wasn't a normal headache. It was an explosion. A silent, internal detonation that seemed to sever every wire in my brain at once. My left hand went numb. The book I was holding slipped from my grasp and hit the linoleum floor with a loud smack. A wave of confusion rolled over me. What was happening? I tried to take a step, but my left leg wouldn't obey. It was a dead weight, a piece of foreign matter attached to my hip. The world began to tilt, the tall bookshelves leaning in towards me like accusing giants. I reached out a hand to steady myself, but I missed the shelf. My fingers grasped at empty air. A strange metallic taste filled my mouth, like sucking on an old penny. The quiet hum of the library seemed to warp and distort, becoming a low, menacing growl. Panic tried to claw its way up my throat, but it was too slow. My body was shutting down faster than my mind could process. I was falling. The fall seemed to take forever. I saw the patterns on the floor tiles rush up to meet me. I remember thinking, this is it. This is a stroke, my clinical, librarian mind cataloging the event even as it was happening. There was a dull, sickening thud as my head hit the floor. Not a sharp crack, just a heavy, final sound. The pain was immense, but distant, as if happening to someone else. My vision narrowed to a tiny pinhole. I could hear a voice, one of my coworkers, Martha, calling my name from a great distance. Sarah? Are you okay? I tried to answer, to tell her to call for help, to call Mark. But my tongue was a leaden lump in my mouth. No sound would come out. The light at the end of the tunnel of my vision was flickering, like a dying candle. And in that final moment, as the last vestiges of the physical world were being stripped away, one single thought burned through the chaos. It wasn't about God. It wasn't about heaven or hell. It was my daughter's face, her eyes filled with hurt and disappointment. The last word my mind formed was her name. Lily. And then everything went black. But the blackness was not an end. It was a transition. There was no tunnel of light, not at first. There was just a release. One moment, I was on the cold floor, trapped in a failing body. The next, I was not. I felt myself being gently pulled upwards, a sensation of effortless floating, like a balloon released from a child's hand. All the pain was gone. The confusion was gone. The fear was gone. I was me, more me than I had ever been, but I was weightless. I was free. I found myself hovering near the ceiling of the library, looking down. The scene below was playing out like a movie. There I was. My body, lying crumpled and still between the shelves of fiction. My glasses were askew, one arm flung out at an unnatural angle. It was a strange sight, like looking at a stranger who just happened to be wearing my clothes. I felt no attachment to it. Only a detached sort of pity. That poor woman. She looked so broken. Martha was kneeling beside my body, her face pale with shock. She was on the phone, her voice frantic and high-pitched. Yes, West Pine Library. She's not breathing. I think she had a stroke. I could feel her panic and her fear like a cold wave in the air, but it didn't touch me. I felt a profound sense of peace, a calm so deep and pervasive it was almost liquid. I was okay. More than okay. I was home. I looked at my coworker, at this kind woman who I'd shared coffee with for 15 years, and I felt a surge of love for her. I wanted to tell her not to be scared, that everything was all right. But I had no voice. Paramedics arrived, their movements urgent and precise. They surrounded my body, their faces grim masks of concentration. They were shouting things. Medical jargon I didn't understand. No pulse. Starting compressions. I watched them work on the body I had just vacated. I saw the violent, rhythmic pump of their hands on my chest. I saw them put a mask over my face. And I felt nothing but a deep, sorrowful love for these strangers who were trying so hard to pull me back to a place I had no desire to be. My concern was not for myself, but for them. For their fear. For Martha's tears, which now flowed freely down her cheeks. It was the strangest feeling. To be at the center of a crisis, and yet to be utterly, completely at peace. Then, the scene below began to change. The edges started to blur, the sharp lines of the bookshelves softening and running together. The sounds, the shouts of the paramedics, the frantic sobs of my friend, began to fade into a gentle hum. The whole world I had just left was dissolving. It was like a watercolor painting left out in the rain, the colors bleeding into one another until the image was lost. It was like a dream you try desperately to hold on to upon waking, the details slipping through your fingers like fine sand. The library, the people, my own body, it was all fading away. I wasn't scared. I knew, with a certainty that came from the very core of my being, that I was not ceasing to exist. I was simply leaving. The last thing I saw was the color of the library carpet, a faded industrial blue, before it too dissolved into a soft, comforting gray. And then I was in a peaceful, quiet darkness. It wasn't a frightening darkness. It was a velvety, gentle blackness, like the moments before dawn. It was a place of rest. I simply floated there, content. For how long, I do not know. Time had ceased to have any meaning. Then, ahead of me, a light began to grow. It wasn't a harsh light. It started as a tiny pinpoint, then slowly, gently, it expanded, pushing back the darkness. It was a warm, golden light, the color of honey held up to the sun. As the light grew, a place began to form around me. It wasn't a grand celestial city with gates of pearl. There were no choirs of angels singing. It was a garden. A simple, beautiful garden. The grass beneath me, I had feet again, I was standing, was a shade of green so vibrant and alive it seemed to hum with energy. There were trees tall and graceful, their leaves glowing with a soft, internal light. The air was filled with a scent I couldn't quite place, but it was the smell of pure life. It was the smell of home. A home I had never known but had always longed for. A profound peace settled over me, a peace that made the calm I felt in the library seem like a raging storm by comparison. This was a peace that was an absence of all striving, all anxiety, all pain. It was the peace of being completely, utterly, and finally known. And then I saw him. He was standing by a simple wooden bench near a small, clear stream. He wasn't what I expected. He didn't look like the pictures in the Sunday school books. There was no long, flowing white robe, no ethereal halo. He looked like a man. Strong, simple. He wore a plain, tunic-like garment, the color of cream. His hair was dark, and his feet were bare in the impossibly green grass. He looked like a carpenter. He looked like a traveler who had stopped to rest. But it was him. I knew it instantly. There was no doubt. Every part of my soul, every fiber of my being, screamed his name in joyful recognition. Jesus. As I looked at him, a feeling began to radiate from him, washing over me in waves. It was love. But that word is a pale, pathetic shadow of what I felt. This was not human love. This was a love so pure, so powerful, so unconditional that it was painful. It was a tidal wave of acceptance that scoured away every last bit of my shame, my fear, my inadequacy. It was a love that knew every selfish thought I'd ever had, every lazy prayer I'd ever mumbled, every moment I had failed, and loved me anyway. Loved me not in spite of it, but loved me completely, through it all. He turned his head and looked at me. And his eyes. I cannot describe his eyes. To try would be to capture a hurricane in a teacup. They were filled with all the light of a billion galaxies, yet they were as gentle as a summer dawn. In his eyes, I saw a kindness so profound it was heartbreaking. I saw a sorrow for the world that was deeper than any ocean. And I saw a love for me, for Sarah, that was fierce and personal and eternal. He smiled, a simple, gentle smile. And then he spoke. He did not speak with his mouth. The words did not travel through the air to my ears. They bloomed inside my mind, clear as crystal, warm as the light that surrounded us. Welcome, little one. Be at peace. The sound of his thoughts in my soul was the most beautiful thing I had ever experienced. And I broke. All the walls I had built around my heart, all the apathy and distraction and noise, crumbled into dust. My knees gave way, and I fell onto the living grass, weeping. But these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of overwhelming joy, of relief so profound it felt like I was dissolving into the light. I was a lost child who had been wandering in a cold, gray wilderness for 48 years, and I had finally found my father. My brother. My king. I knelt there, my head bowed, sobbing with a gratitude that was too immense for my soul to contain. I felt so small, so unworthy. I thought of my life, my empty habits, my wasted time, my argument with Lily. The shame was a burning coal in my heart. He took a step towards me. I felt his presence beside me, a comforting warmth. Do not be ashamed, he said, his thought voice filled with infinite tenderness. I know your heart. I have always known it. And you are so loved. His acceptance was a healing balm on the wound of my regret. I looked up at him, my vision blurred with tears of joy. He was not looking at me with judgment. He was looking at me with a love that was rewriting my entire existence. After a timeless moment, I managed to form a thought, a question that was more a feeling than a word. Am I dead? He smiled again. You are more alive now than you have ever been. He gestured to the wooden bench. Sit with me, Sarah. I walked to the bench and sat beside him. The peace I felt was so total that I thought, I can stay here forever. This is all I need. We sat in a comfortable silence for a long time, just looking at the light playing on the leaves of the trees. Then he turned to me, his expression becoming more serious. The deep sorrow in his eyes seemed to grow stronger. There is something I need to show you, he said, the words echoing in the core of my being. There is a sickness in the world I love. A slow poison. And my children, even those who bear my name, are drinking it willingly. Before I could ask what he meant, the world around me changed. The beautiful garden did not disappear. Instead, it became like a screen, a backdrop upon which visions began to play. First, he showed me myself. It wasn't a judgment. It was a gentle, heartbreaking reveal. I saw myself at the dinner table, Mark trying to tell me about a problem at his work, his face etched with worry. And I saw myself nodding, saying, while my eyes were on a television screen in the other room, watching some vapid award show. I saw the light go out of my husband's eyes as he realized I wasn't really there with him. I saw myself in the car with Lily. She was pointing out a beautiful sunset, her face alight with childlike wonder. And I was on the phone, having a pointless argument with my sister about something that didn't matter. I missed the sunset. I missed the moment with my daughter. I saw a montage of 1,000 missed connections. 1,000 moments where I chose the counterfeit over the real. I saw myself kneeling by my bed, my lips moving in prayer, but my mind was a million miles away, replaying a news report, stewing over a political comment, thinking about an actor's latest film. My prayers were hitting the ceiling and falling back down, empty and unheard, because my heart wasn't in them. The grief I felt was immense. A grief for my own wasted life, for the love I had failed to give and receive. He didn't need to say a word. I understood. I had been present in body, but absent in spirit. I had filled my life with so much noise that I had become empty. This, his voice was so sad, is the beginning of the sickness. Then the vision expanded. It pulled back from my own small life and showed me the world. And what I saw broke my heart. I saw millions, no, billions of people. They were in their homes, in their cars, walking down the street. And they were all looking down. They were looking at little glowing rectangles in their hands. But that wasn't the vision. That was just the mechanism. He showed me what was happening in the spirit. I saw people, good people, people who called themselves Christians, sitting in pews on Sunday morning. They held Bibles in their laps, but their minds were somewhere else. I saw what they were thinking about. The sports score. The political argument they'd had online. The latest episode of a popular show. But most of all, I saw them worshiping. But they weren't worshiping God. He gave me a metaphor, a vision to help me understand. They're worshiping dying stars, he said, his voice laced with a divine sorrow. I saw people, actors, singers, influencers, athletes, politicians, and in the spiritual realm, they were shimmering. They glowed with a temporary, flickering light. The light of fame, the light of wealth, the light of public opinion. And I saw the people on the ground looking up at these shimmering figures with adoration. They built little altars in their hearts to these people. They knew every detail of these celebrities' lives, their marriages, their divorces, their diets, their opinions. They defended them online with a passion they never used to defend their faith. They copied their clothes, their hairstyles, their way of speaking. They absorbed their values, their morality, their politics without a second thought. These dying stars became their moral compass, their source of wisdom, their pastors. And Jesus showed me the stars themselves. He pulled back the curtain of their fame. And they were just people. Sad, empty people, trapped in the prison of their own public image. Their shimmering light was cold. It offered no warmth. It offered no life. They were dying stars, collapsing in on themselves, and myriads of people were hitching their wagons to them, hoping to catch some of their light. They ignore the creator of the stars, Jesus said, his grief washing over me, to worship the stars I have made, which are themselves just dust and light, fading away. Then the vision shifted. It grew darker. He showed me the architect of this deception. I never saw a figure. There was no devil with horns and a pitchfork. There was only a presence. A cold, intelligent, thieving presence. The enemy. And Jesus explained the enemy's plan. It was horrifying in its simplicity. He does not need to make them evil, he said. He only needs to make them empty. The enemy's great victory in this modern age was not in creating murderers and villains. It was in creating a world of distraction. It is a silent theft, Jesus explained. A theft of time. A theft of attention. A theft of conversation. A theft of family. A theft of prayer. He showed me a family at a dinner table. Each person was on their phone. Golden threads of light, representing their connection, their love, their potential for relationship, were hanging between them. And I saw shadowy, unseen scissors, wielded by the enemy, snipping those threads one by one. The family was together, but they were utterly alone. They cannot hear me in the quiet, because there is no more quiet, Jesus said. The thief has filled every silent space with his noise, his counterfeit dramas, his counterfeit relationships, his counterfeit wisdom. I saw people praying for guidance, but their hearts and minds were already filled to the brim with the opinions of 1,000 dying stars. My voice, he explained, was being drowned out. I saw people who were lonely, and instead of turning to God or to their own families, they were filling their loneliness with the illusion of connection to celebrities they would never meet. It was a spiritual junk food that left them starved. This is the sin, Jesus said, and the words landed with the weight of eternity. It is the sin of idolatry, repackaged for a modern age. It is the worship of the created over the creator. And it leads to a profound emptiness, a soul-deep hollowness. This emptiness, this is the hell they are choosing every day. A world without my presence. A world without true connection. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. I died for a relationship, not a religion of habits. I died to be their friend, their brother, their guide. Not to be a name they check on a list while their hearts are 1,000 miles away, worshipping shadows and echoes. He did not show me a lake of fire. He showed me something far more terrifying. He showed me a heaven of infinite love, light, and connection, and millions of people turning their backs on it, refusing to enter, because they preferred the flickering, cold light of the dying stars they had worshipped on earth. They had become so empty that they could no longer receive his love. That was the true hell. The vision faded, and we were back in the garden. I was trembling, shattered by what I had seen. Why? I managed to think, the question a sob in my soul. What do we do? His gaze was firm, but full of love. Choose, he said. You must teach them to choose. Choose what is real over what is fake. Choose the person sitting next to you over the flickering image on the screen. Choose the silence in which you can hear my voice over the noise that drowns me out. Choose to build your life and your family on my rock, not on the shifting sands of public opinion and celebrity culture. He leaned in, and his voice was filled with a powerful love. Their smallest prayers, when prayed with a true heart, shake the foundations of that darkness. Their smallest act of turning away from the noise and turning towards each other is a victory of light. They have more power than they know. They just have to use it. The weight of his words settled on me. I understood. It was a message of warning, but also a message of incredible hope. And then a dreadful realization dawned on me. He was giving me a message to take back. No, the thought leaped from me, desperate and pleading. Please, don't make me go back. I looked around at the perfect piece of the garden, at his face, which was my whole world. I want to stay here with you, I begged. Please. The world is too hard. It's too loud and too painful. I can't. I want to stay home. The sorrow in his eyes deepened, but his resolve was firm. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and I could feel the love and power flowing through it. Your work is not done, Sarah, he said gently. Your daughter needs her mother. Your husband needs his wife. They need the woman you will be when you return. His voice was kind, but it was a command. You must go back, he said. You must be a light. You must tell them what you saw. You must tell them that I love them, that I am waiting for them, and that they must choose. Tears of a different kind now streamed down my face. Tears of grief. The thought of leaving this place, of leaving him, was an agony beyond any physical pain I had ever known. It was like being ripped in two. I will never leave you, he promised, his voice the last thing I heard in my soul. Even when you cannot see me, I will be with you. Now go. He didn't push me. He simply released me. The feeling was of falling. A violent, jarring plummet from light into darkness, from peace into chaos. The return to my body was the single most excruciating moment of my existence. It was a slam, a crash. One moment I was pure spirit, the next I was crammed back into the tight, painful confines of flesh and bone. My first breath was fire. It burned my lungs, raw and agonizing. Pain exploded in my head, 1,000 times worse than before. The lights of the hospital room, I was in a hospital room, were searingly bright, like spotlights aimed directly into my soul. Every sound was a physical blow. The rhythmic beep of a machine, the rustle of a sheet, the murmur of voices, it was a cacophony that assaulted my senses. I gasped, a deep, ragged, desperate sound. My eyes flew open, and the first thing I saw was the face of a nurse, her eyes wide with shock. She's breathing. She's breathing on her own, she yelled. Then I saw Mark. He was standing by the bed, his face a mess of tears and exhaustion. When he saw my eyes open, a sound escaped his lips, a strangled sob of pure disbelief and relief. But all I felt was grief. An overwhelming, soul-crushing homesickness for the garden, for his presence. I had been ripped from heaven and thrown back into a noisy, painful, broken world. I started to cry, but these were the tears of an exile. The days that followed were a blur of tests and baffled doctors. My doctor, a kind man named Dr. Evans, kept shaking his head, looking at my charts and then at me. "I don't understand," he said to Mark, thinking I was asleep. She was gone for 22 minutes. A massive hemorrhagic stroke. There should be catastrophic brain damage. At best, she should be in a vegetative state. He held up a brain scan. But look. There's nothing. The damage, it's like it's vanishing. Her brain activity is completely normal. Her heart, everything. It's impossible. Mark, his voice thick with emotion, just said one word. "It's a miracle." Dr. Evans was silent for a long time. Then he sighed. "I'm a man of science," he said quietly. "But I have no medical explanation for this. None. A miracle. That's what they called it. But I knew it was a mission." The transformation in my life was immediate and total. The old Sarah had died in that library. A new one had been sent back. The first thing I did when they let me have my phone was not to check the news. It was to call my sister and apologize for our stupid fight. When I got home, I took the television out of the living room. I canceled my streaming services. I deleted the news and social media apps from my phone. Mark and Lily thought I had lost my mind. But then they saw the change. The heavy, lonely blanket that had smothered our family was lifted. I sat with Mark and I listened. I put my phone in another room and I looked into his eyes when he spoke. I asked questions. I was present. One evening, he just broke down and cried, holding my hand. "I've got my wife back," he said. "I've missed you so much." With Lily, it was harder. She was wary, skeptical. But I didn't preach. I just changed. I sat with her and asked about the girl who was being bullied, and I remembered her name. I listened to her talk about her favorite influencer, and instead of judging, I asked her what she liked about her. And then we talked. A real conversation. Slowly, she began to put her own phone down too. We started taking walks. We started talking at the dinner table. We started being a family again. My faith was no longer a piece of furniture. It was the very air I breathed. My prayers were no longer lists. They were conversations with the friend who had welcomed me home and sent me back. The peace of the garden never fully left me. It's a quiet pool in the center of my soul that I can return to whenever the world gets too loud. He kept his promise. He is with me. So I'm telling you this story for him. For you. What he showed me was a warning. The enemy, the thief, is not trying to make you a monster. He is trying to make you empty. He is stealing your life, your relationships, and your connection to God. One 60-second video, one news headline, one piece of celebrity gossip at a time. He is getting you to worship dying stars, to put your faith in the hollow, flickering lights of this world. And it is creating a generation of good, decent Christians who are spiritually starving to death in a land of plenty. The phone is not the evil. The internet is not the evil. The tool is not the problem. It's the worship. It's the replacement. It's allowing the noise of the world to become the God of your heart and the shepherd of your soul. So I am asking you, begging you, to do something when this is over. Put your phone down. Look at the person you love who is sitting in the same room with you and ask them a real question. And listen, truly listen, to the answer. Find a moment of true silence today. No podcasts, no music, no television. Just silence. And turn your heart towards the God who is waiting to speak to you in that quiet. Ask yourself honestly, who do I worship? Whose opinions shape my own? Whose life do I know more about, the latest influencer or the Savior who died for me? Please, I implore you, choose what is real. Heaven is real. His love is real. And He is waiting for you. Don't let the thief steal your soul by filling it with emptiness. Don't trade the Creator of the universe for the dying stars of this earth.